Hello guys, today we'll be going through the 5 main categories of Bluebook SAT tests. The first 4 to 5 questions are going to be words and context. The strategy is to answer these questions is to first read the passage, then, without looking at the answer choices, fill in the blank with your own word. After putting in your own word, look at the answer choices and choose the word similar to yours. I recommend that you guys pause the video and try to solve it on your own now. Okay, the word I put in the blank was stop, Booker T. So the word that most resembles stop would be hinder. So that means B is correct. Now we're going to go on to reading comprehension questions. Reading comprehension questions make up around 10 to 15 questions per each module, which is the bulk of the SAT, reading and writing. The main trick with reading and writing comprehension questions is to first read the question to find out what the overall question is going to ask. Then read the full passage. After understanding what the passage says, we can move on to the answer choices. Some tips are that if a question is partly wrong or only mentions half what the question asks for, it is completely wrong. We can also not make inferences, which means if it is not said in the text, we cannot assume it's correct. Doing these questions on the real test, I encourage you guys to use the cross-off answer tool, which I do not have here, but you should use it still. I recommend that you guys pause the video and try to solve it on your own. Okay, cool. So now looking at this part most clearly answers the question, and this corresponds with A. So the answer is A. Going on to grammar questions, which usually makes up around 5 to 6 questions per module are the grammar questions. The first thing to know about grammar questions is that you can be asked a lot of things. This briefly includes subject-verb agreement, correct pronouns, use of periods, semicolons, colons, and use of modifiers. This question is based on subject-verb agreement, and is asking us to pick what verb fits best in the blank. A quick little test that can save you a lot of time is known the he-they test. The he-they test works like this. You go straight to the answer choices and you figure out if the verb is singular or plural. Starting with A. If we try he first, he was sounds right, so it is singular. They was doesn't sound right, so it is not plural. Then if we go on to B, so B is were. So if we do he were, that doesn't sound right. But then if we do they were, it does, so it is plural. And if we keep going on, we do it to C, they are, so it's plural. They have been, that is also plural. So this is kind of like the odd man out. All of these are plural, and this is singular. So we obviously know it has to be the odd one out. We can also determine the answer. There's another way too. Another way is just looking at this and saying, well, this is singular, and this blank is referring to this. So the only singular one just was. So it is A. Now going on to transitions. Transitions is like 3 to 4 questions on usually the digital SAT. And this is the strategy for this is kind of similar to words and context one, where we first read the text and then fill in the blank with our own transitions without looking at the answers. Then once we have our own word, we look at the answers to compare. And I recommend pausing and trying to solve this on your own. So now I'll go through the answer choices or the transitions. So by contrast, meaning like shows the opposite or difference, this is kind of like a contrast one. So we gotta think, would this fit well? Then going on to B, likewise. Likewise is like shows a similar idea. It's kind of like a comparison in a way. Now going on to C, besides, the meaning is kind of like adds another supporting point. And it's kind of like an addition. In fact, it's kind of like an example. And the meaning's like strengthens or emphasizes the previous point. So now if we look at this, we see that it's kind of looking for like a example, or for example. That was my word I put here. And that closely resembles D. So the answer is D. Now finally going on to the last category, which is rhetorical synthesis. This is usually the last 3 to 4 questions. The trick is to save time with these and not get confused is by starting by reading the question. Then to look to the answer choices to see what answer is best. Sometimes you will never even have to read the information. However, on the second module, there are times where you usually will have to. Because if there's similar answers, then you will look back in the information to see what answer is right. College Word tries to be really tricky, and usually, like, let's say the real answer is C. They will sometimes put an answer similar to C, like a B, because they know people don't read all the questions, and then they just pick B because it answers this question. But that is not correct. You have to look here and make sure this proves this answer right. So always make sure to read all the questions to make sure none of them are similar. And if none of them are similar and only one works, you know that is the correct answer. So now, if we look at this question and we see it says, audience is already familiar, this means that like the writer does not need to explain the basic background information because the readers already know it. Now, I recommend you pause and try to solve this. Okay, so now that you're back, we can obviously see by looking at this question, the answer that most answers this is going to be C. Thank you guys. That is all. Comment below if you guys want me to do a more in-depth review of College Board Bluebook tests, and if I should go over Module 2, which are the harder questions. Thank you guys.